By Associated Press, published 5:12 Greenwich Mean Time, the 23rd of January 2020, updated 16:32 Greenwich Mean Time, the 23rd of January 2020. Washington, AP. The challenge is becoming increasingly clear for House Democrats prosecuting President Donald Trump's impeachment case as the Senate convenes for a second day of arguments in the landmark trial. The evidence confronting Trump becomes less compelling when presented again and again, day after day, as Democrats try to convince not just fidgety senators but an American public deeply divided over the Republican president in an election year. As the Senate gavels in Thursday, the Democrats are one-third of the way through the 24 hours allotted to make their case. The team, led by Rep. Adam Schiff, chairman of House Intelligence Committee, constructed what they hoped was a gripping account of Trump's political pressure on Ukraine and attempt to cover up the corrupt scheme central to the charges. But the limits are apparent. Prosecutors must rely on the same loops of videotaped testimony, ambassadors, national security officials, and even the president himself, after Trump's GOP Senate allies blocked new witnesses. Once reluctant to take on impeachment during an election year, Democrats are now marching toward a decision by the Senate that the American public also will judge. "We're trying this case to two juries, the Senate and the American people," Schiff acknowledged. "The American people are watching. The American people are listening. And they do have an open mind." House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff, D. Califf, departs the Capitol late Wednesday, Jan. 22, 2020, following arguments in the impeachment trial of President Donald Trump on charges of abuse of power and obstruction of Congress, in Washington. AP photo, J. Scott Applewhite. Trump blasted the proceedings in a Thursday morning tweet, declaring them the most unfair. They also charged him with obstructing Congress by refusing to turn over documents or allow officials to testify in the House probe. Republicans have defended Trump's actions as appropriate and cast the process as a politically motivated effort to weaken the president in the midst of his re-election campaign. Campaigning in Iowa, Biden stood by the effort to remove Trump from office. People ask the question, "Isn't the president going to be stronger and harder to beat if he survives this?" "Yes, probably. But Congress has no choice," he said. Senators must cast their votes and, live with that in history, each side has up to 3 days to present its case. After the House prosecutors finish, likely Friday, the president's lawyers will launch their 24 hours. It's unclear how much time they will actually take, but Trump's team promises not only to defend the president but to take apart the Democrats' case. The Senate is expected to take only Sunday off and push into next week. "There's a lot of things I'd like to rebut," said Trump lawyer Jay Sekulow at the Capitol, "and we will rebut. After that, senators will face the question of whether they do, or do not, want to call witnesses to testify." On the first day of opening arguments, Schiff appealed to senators not to be cynical about politics, but to draw on the intent of the nation's founding fathers in providing the remedy of impeachment and removal. He spoke directly to Republicans to join in voting to oust Trump from office to protect our democracy. Holding the room proved difficult. Most senators sat at their desks throughout, as the rules stipulate, though some stretched their legs, standing behind the desks or against the back wall of the chamber. Sometimes they yawned. Republicans sometimes quietly smirked at the presentation from Schiff and the lesser-known House Democrats prosecuting the case. Nearing 9 long hours of arguments, the empty seats became glaringly apparent. Senator Dianne Feinstein, D. Califf, was under the weather and left early. Some lawmakers dashed down the hall to appear on television. Visitors thinned from the galleries, one briefly interrupting in protest and being removed by Capitol Police. GOP Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina told reporters he was hearing exactly what they said yesterday, nothing new whatsoever. But another Republican, Sen. John Kennedy of Louisiana, acknowledged that the case against the president is probably new information for most of them. 9 out of 10 senators will tell you that they have not read the transcript of the proceedings of the House. And the 10th senator who says he has is lying. The impeachment trial is set against the backdrop of the 2020 election. All 4 senators who are Democratic presidential candidates are off the campaign trail, seated as jurors. Several GOP senators said Wednesday they'd seen no evidence to support the allegations against Trump, even though, just 24 hours earlier, they had rejected subpoenas for additional witnesses as well as documents. Democrats, meanwhile, described the evidence against the president as overwhelming but said senators had a duty to gather more. A new poll from the Associated Press Nork Center for Public Affairs Research showed the public slightly more likely to say the Senate should convict and remove Trump from office than to say it should not, 45% to 40%. But a sizable percentage, 14%, said they didn't know enough to have an opinion. One issue with wide agreement: Trump should allow top aides to appear as witnesses at the trial. About 7 in 10 said so, including majorities of Republicans and Democrats, according to the poll. The strategy of more witnesses, though, seemed all but settled. Republicans rejected Democratic efforts to get Trump aides, including former National Security Advisor John Bolton, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Acting Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney, to testify in back-to-back votes earlier this week. Senators were likely to repeat that rejection next week, shutting out any chance of new testimony. Some Republicans expressed disdain for it all. Sen. Joni Ernst of Iowa spoke sarcastically about how excited she was to hear the overwhelming evidence the House Democrats promised against Trump. "And once we've heard that overwhelming evidence," she said, raising her voice mockingly, "I don't know that we'll need to see additional witnesses, but let's hear about that overwhelming evidence." Senate Democratic Leader Chuck Schumer bemoaned the limits on witnesses, saying Wednesday the impeachment trial begins with a cloud hanging over it, a cloud of unfairness. Republicans remained eager for a swift trial. Trump's legal team passed on an opportunity to file a motion to dismiss the case on Wednesday, an acknowledgement that there were not enough Republican votes to support it. The White House legal team, in its court filings and presentations, has not disputed Trump's actions. But the lawyers insist the president did nothing wrong. Associated Press writers Mary Claire Jelinek, Alan Fram, Andrew Taylor, Lori Kalman, Matthew Daly and Padmananda Rama in Washington and Bill Barrow in Osage, Iowa, contributed to this report. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, RK, leaves the Senate chamber after the impeachment trial of President Donald Trump at the U.S. Capitol, Wednesday, Jan. 22, 2020, in Washington. AP photo: Steve Helber, Senator Tammy Duckworth, DL, departs the Capitol, late Wednesday, Jan. 22, 2020, following arguments in the impeachment trial of President Donald Trump on charges of abuse of power and obstruction of Congress, in Washington. AP photo: J. Scott Applewhite, Chief Justice John Roberts departs the U.S. Capitol Wednesday, Jan. 22, 2020, following arguments in the impeachment trial of President Donald Trump on charges of abuse of power and obstruction of Congress, in Washington. AP photo: J. Scott Applewhite, a copy of a Senate draft resolution to be offered by Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, RK, regarding the procedures during the impeachment trial of President Donald Trump in the U.S. Senate is photographed in Washington, Monday, January 20, 2020. McConnell is proposing a condensed two-day calendar for opening arguments in Trump's impeachment trial, ground rules that are raising objections from Democrats on the eve of the landmark proceedings. AP photo: John Ellswick, let's block ads. Why?